I'm Jeff Franke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. There were a lot of trends emanating from the mid-1980s that thankfully died out over time, but one of them has not only persisted, but thrived. Although there were numerous samples of malware impacting early computer networks, the one that captured both headlines and the admiration of cyber criminals was the PC-Write Trojan virus. Iterations would follow, with perhaps the best known example of industrial malware, Stuxnet, being introduced about 25 years later. It would be topped by WannaCry Ransomware just 7 years after that. In all these cases, bad actors were able to probe vulnerabilities, identify weak spots, and exploit these lapses in erasing data, eliminating access, or promising more extensive damage if their monetary demands were not met. These viruses, worms, and malicious coding is still present today, and those armed with this malware have gotten smarter, their attacks more complex, and their search for victims more intense. The industrial sector and municipal utilities, with their combination of lucrative IP, essential production models, and lagging security protocols, have become a favorite target. Joining us today to help navigate this minefield of bad actors is Marty Edwards. He's the Vice President of OT Security at Tenable, a leading provider of infrastructure and cloud network software and security solutions. Marty, thanks so much for joining us today. You know, when we look at the industrial sector, as well as a lot of water treatment facilities, utilities, things like that, we're just seeing this huge uptick in cyber attacks coming out of the pandemic, presumably, but there still seem to be really popular targets for these bad actors. What's your take on that? What is making these particular locations and businesses such prime targets?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And it's great to be on today. I think there's multiple factors at play here. I think that in general, the sort of critical infrastructure security space is getting better at detecting these types of breaches and incidents. So we have an uptick in reporting. I think that in general, especially with geopolitical events, the media and the general public are more interested in hearing about these types of things. And then I think that what's driving it from a criminal activity perspective is that these types of manufacturing environments or critical infrastructure environments are particularly profitable, right? Or they're important to companies and to the stakeholders that they serve. And so if they can be held hostage with things like ransomware, they're very lucrative targets, right? So the criminal sort of element tends to rotate towards where they can make the most money, and I guess they've made some good profit off of it in the last little while. So they're rotating towards those entities as targets.
Well, we can definitely see that. Colonial Pipeline and JBS, they're probably the two biggest higher profile ransomware attacks. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of is malware. Okay, people are getting into the enterprise and embedding this malware. And I think really when we look at a lot of the different types of attacks, this one can maybe even have the broadest reach. From your experience, Marty, what can you tell us about who are some of these people using this type of stuff, and what can industrial players do to really try to prevent malware specifically from infecting their organization?
Yeah, and I'll use a specific type of malware again, I think, in my response, which is the prevalence of ransomware, or the spread of ransomware that we're seeing. Typically, ransomware is not usually cutting edge kind of cyber weapons technology, right? I mean, they tend to repurpose older vulnerabilities that have been patched sometimes for many years in their kit, right? So they're going after the low-hanging fruit, and so I think that what most organizations should try to do is just have a really good cybersecurity fundamentals kind of in place. The ability to detect. I mean, I had a phishing email this morning that came in, and I forwarded it on to my InfoSec team, and so you need to keep your people kind of I guess in the loop with good training so that they can be the front lines of your defense. You need to take a good look at your technology, make sure that your systems are well maintained. I tend to use the term cyber maintenance. I think that people need to think about these computer networks and environments the same way they think about a rotating machine like a pump. You buy $1 million piece of equipment in a factory, you tend to spend some money on maintaining those pieces of equipment. But if we spend $1 million on a computer system, people don't think about it the right way. And I believe cybersecurity is just as important as that grease and oil that you put into those rotating machines. So make sure that you've got that, all three aspects of cybersecurity, which in my mind are people, process, and technology.
Makes a lot of sense. When we look at a lot of these situations too, I'd kind of be interested to get your take on something that seems very basic, but continues to really be a challenge, which is password protection. It seems like a lot of folks, especially in the industrial sector, don't put a lot of thought into it, or it's just sort of one of those things. We've heard a lot about double factor authentication, just updating software password on a timely basis. Maybe you could offer some perspective there in terms of either best practices or things you shouldn't be doing, at least make the life thing a little bit harder for the attackers here.
Yeah, and for sure, identity and managing, the identities of all of your users in an environment, and seeing where those weak configurations or access configurations are located is an important aspect, right? So if you break it down into individual components, not every user has the same types and needs from an access perspective, and therefore not every user or not every time they log on do they need to use the same account privileges, right, or same password sort of rules. So somebody that is logging on for day-to-day job that isn't a admin or an administrator in the network environment, can probably have a fairly good, strong passphrase, something that you can remember easily, but is also fairly long. I think that we've shown now that the length perhaps is more important than some of the complexity. So you don't have to make it all like characters and numbers and upside down things, just
Sure.
have a good lengthy passphrase. But then on the other hand, if you have people that are remotely accessing your operations, vendors or privileged users like admins and engineers, by all means, you should be enforcing multi-factor authentication, the removable sort of key or some other types of multi-factor authentication, so that they have to go through more steps. And I think another overlooked area is you should also be logging all those connections, right? So when people come in at 2:30 in the morning to do some remote maintenance, that should be captured. Who logged in? When did they log in? And quite frankly, from an operations perspective, who gave them the authority to log in? I mean, those remote access types of connections don't have to be enabled 24 hours a day. You should only be enabling them when you have those needs for those types of services.
Absolutely. So, Marty, we've talked about some of the bad stuff. Let's talk about some of the good stuff. You're currently working at Tenable. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the company and some of the things you're doing and the people you're working with.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the vice president of operational technology. I report into the chief technology officer, which means my role isn't necessarily in sales or marketing or something like that. My role is more around how are we as a company responding to our customers' needs in this area. And I think what we've talked about up to now really kind of encapsulates all that. We've talked about things like identity and password management and that within the critical infrastructures. And so Tenable recently acquired a company that does just that, does that kind of identity and configuration management around Active Directory implementations. As well, you probably have seen recently that we are intent to acquire a company that does the sort of internet threat intelligence. So is my system connected to the internet, and do I have some exposure there? So all of these, I think, point to the fact that operational technology security or industrial control system security is not just about detecting a known malware signature on your network. It's more than just understanding sort of the assets that you have in your network. It's really understanding all of these different risk areas and then combining them all. So for example, I may have an industrial computer that's running some older software operating system that has a known vulnerability. Well, if that computer also happens to be logged in with a very highly privileged account, and if it also happens to be visible on the internet, combining all those factors together are what I think really increases your risk on that particular area. And so that's where we strive to improve the visibility into these operations, understanding with the language of operating technology engineers, so that we can communicate with them where those risks are and help them prioritize how to take them off the table.
So Marty, it sounds like a lot of the work you do, you're trying to kind of break down some of those silos that really seem to exist. We tend to think about it primarily in the industrial sector, but really it's prevalent throughout. What's some of your experience there in working with companies to make sure everybody's talking to each other on the operational side, the IT side, and beyond?
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that comes up often. So, we talk about this convergence, right? So you have this convergence of IT and OT, and I get a lot of pushback sometimes from organizations that say, we're not converged, and what they mean is that their IT and OT networks may not be directly interconnected. They have some air gap or some defense in depth characteristics in place. But what they aren't, I don't think, always taking into consideration is that the people behind all of this are converging, right? So the information security people are being tasked by the chief information security officer to get better insight into what the risks are in these systems, and to get a better plan in place for hardening and improving, the security there. So, if I had any guidance, I guess it would be talk to your peers and your colleagues in these other organizations, and they're not out there to get you. Everybody's working for the same cause or principle, right? So if you're an energy company, your mission is to deliver energy safely and reliably to your customers. If you're a manufacturing plant, it's about manufacturing whatever gizmos or widgets come off the production line. The IT people and the OT people have that same mission set in mind. They tend to communicate it differently. The OT people are primed with uptime and numbers like that in their head, and the IT people are primed with decreasing number of vulnerable systems. They're trying to improve the company's risk position in those ways. And if you can sit down across the table from each other, or better yet, over a coffee or a beer, have a conversation about what you're trying to accomplish, I think you'll find that the mission sets or the objectives are quite complementary, right? You can actually make them all kind of go in the same direction.
Makes sense. Marty, one question I always ask everybody when they come on security breach, when it pertains to ransomware, what's your take here? I mean, you've got a lot of different experience to draw from. Do you pay the ransom if you're confronted with that situation, or do you try to avoid doing that?
It's a tough question, and it's come up multiple times over the years that I've kind of been in these roles. Personally, I say you shouldn't. I think that it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you pay criminals to do their work and they're successful, I think they're, first of all, you can't trust a criminal, right? So how do you know they're going to actually carry through with what they say they're going to? And I think you've just painted a brighter target on your back. There's been some very interesting debate, I think, with regards to insurance carriers, and some policies have allowed companies to make insurance claims to claim back the ransom that they paid, and I think they're rethinking that a little bit, right? We should not cover ransom payments as part of an insurance package. So I think that back in the U.S. government days when I was a civil servant, we of course also were very much opposed to the paying of the ransom. So I think you've seen any detractors from that position, kind of whittle away. But ultimately, and I guess I'll play devil's advocate against myself. Ultimately, it's a individual company decision, right? I mean, if you unfortunately had to be in a situation where you lost all of your backups, you didn't have any way to get back up and online, and the ransom was the only hope you had of getting things back and running, unfortunately you may be in a position where you have to pay it. But I would suggest that some exercises and some training and some risk analysis or evaluation ahead of time is a far better investment, than having to deal with it after the fact. If you can, and that was the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. Well, I think it's particularly valid when it comes to ransomware, right? You can invest a lot in prevention and increase your general state of security in these systems, and it'll be far, far less costly than what it has to be if you have to go in and clean it up post-incident or post-breach.
Makes a lot of sense. Marty, wrapping things up a little bit, as we look down the road 12 to 18 months, are we going to see some of the same stuff persisting? Or are we going to see some new bad things kind of popping up here? What kind of trends do you see taking place in the sort of the global cybersecurity front?
I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, especially on the close here, but it seems like we are kind of repeating ourselves, right? And maybe it's just because I've been in this business too long almost now, and 15 plus years dedicated specifically to industrial cybersecurity. I think we're getting better. So I think that, the awareness levels coming up, unfortunate incidents like the Colonial or JBS Meets or other large ransomware sort of breaches tend to shake up the industry. But I also hope that we aren't sort of sitting here in 5 years and you and I are having a conversation looking back of, hey, well, what did we do? What should have we done? I think we have to, as a community or industry in general, kind of plot a course and go, here's where we want to be in 5 years, and actually make some significant and stepwise improvements in how we address these things. I think it's particularly unfortunate that companies and governments alike tend to invest a lot of money in IT security, their overall cybersecurity posture, but we significantly or tremendously underinvest in the OT or production line environments. And we need to shift some of that spending. Doesn't mean we have to increase spend. I just think that we should reevaluate where we're spending those dollars and put more of them into these operational environments. Because quite frankly, without those operational environments, your company will cease to exist, right?
Thanks, Marty. For more information on the work Tenable does, you can go to www.tenable.com. Thanks for joining us today. To catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or mbtmag.com. For Marty Edwards, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.